Imagine a real-life Squid Game, but way more terrifying, that actually happened 90 years ago in the Soviet Union. Back in the 1990s, when the USSR collapsed, a secret report came to light, spilling the details of something truly horrifying. This report uncovered one of the most chilling and deadly experiments ever conducted, on a tiny island in Russia, with 6,000 people as the unwilling players. These poor souls were dumped there with no food, no water, in freezing conditions so cold it could chill your bones. Their only shot at survival? Turning on each other. And that's exactly what happened. It got so brutal that even women and children weren't spared. This is the true story of the Soviet Union's Cannibal Island. So, did anyone survive this nightmare? Why was this twisted experiment even carried out? And how did thousands of people end up on this remote island? Stick around till the end to find out, because this video is going to be absolutely gripping. Hey everyone, I'm Kaushik, and let's dive into this one together. You know, sometimes real life is way more terrifying than anything we could dream up. Some stories sound like they're straight out of a blockbuster movie script, but in truth, they're some of humanity's darkest tragedies. Today, I'm taking you through one of those, a real bone-chilling event that'll leave you shaken. This is the story of Cannibal Island during Stalin's reign, where people lost every shred of humanity and did things to survive that'll make your skin crawl just thinking about it. But before we jump in, pause for a sec and picture this. You're trapped on an island with nothing, no food, no water, and death staring you down from every corner. What would you do? The answer to that question is exactly what history's most horrifying chapter, Cannibal Island, reveals to us. History's seen its share of dictators, but Joseph Stalin? He's at the top of the list. This guy wasn't just obsessed with power. He had no regard for human life whatsoever. To crush his enemies, he'd go to any extreme. So in the 1930s, Stalin was ruling the Soviet Union with an iron fist. To stay in control, he sent millions to their graves. In an event called the Great Terror, he had about 750,000 people killed. Let that sink in. Disagree with him? Dead. Have a different opinion? Dead. But bullets weren't his only weapon. He had another tactic: shipping people off to the icy, desolate wastelands of Siberia, far from their homes, families, and freedom. The Soviet Union was massive back then, covering nearly 40% of the world's land, and Stalin used that to his advantage. He'd send people to these so-called reform camps, places so harsh and isolated that coming back was next to impossible. These weren't just camps, they were a fate worse than death, and that's how Nazino Island became known as Hell's second name. In the 1930s, Stalin kicked off a new experiment. His plan? Dump criminals and anyone he didn't want around onto Siberia's barren lands. He thought, hey, I'll get rid of these people, and maybe they'll turn this wasteland into farmland. But let's be real, that was never going to work. The people he sent weren't farmers. They had no tools, no skills, just hunger, sickness, and desperation. The real horror started on May 14th, 1933. That's when they loaded 5,000 prisoners onto giant wooden boats and shipped them off to Nazino Island, right in the middle of Siberia's Ob River. The journey took 4 brutal days, and all they got to eat, 5 measly slices of bread each. It was so bad that 27 people didn't even make it. They died before reaching the island. When they finally got to Nazino Island, they probably hoped for something, anything to survive. But nope, nothing but empty land, mud, and freezing water. No shelter, no food, no way to make a fire. The only food they had was 20 tons of raw flour. But how do you eat raw flour? There's no way to cook it or make bread. That first night was a disaster. 300 people died from cold, hunger, and exhaustion. The next day, they tried handing out the flour, but it turned into pure chaos. These people were so starved they went wild and started attacking each other. The guards? They couldn't handle it and backed off, leaving everyone to fend for themselves. The island became a living hell, blood, screams, and death everywhere. Can you even imagine how far humanity can fall? When hunger gets so bad that people are forced to eat each other just to survive? From the second they stepped onto Nadzino Island, those prisoners knew they were in for a brutal punishment. No food, no shelter, just biting cold all around. The basic things you need to live, gone. And when hunger pushes you past your limits, it brings out the animal inside. That first week, the prisoners were still grappling with their reality, but hunger was already flour among 5,000 starving people. It was a war zone. The guards thought they'd split everyone into groups to distribute it, but these people were too far gone. They'd lost all control. The moment they tried handing out the flour, a riot exploded. People were attacking each other left and right. The guards, outmatched and clueless. They retreated to their boats, hid, and left everyone starving with nothing. What happened next on that island? Those people writhing in hunger wrote a new definition of human brutality. For the first few days, they tried mixing the flour with the river's icy water just to eat something. But that water was a death sentence. It brought diseases like dysentery. Every day, over 100 people were dying from sickness or the cold. When that small stash of flour ran out, things got even uglier. People started doing whatever it took to survive. Small gangs formed, attacking others to steal whatever scraps were left. And sometimes, those gangs didn't hesitate to kill. But the prisoners weren't the only monsters. The guards, sent to keep order, were worse. They broke every rule, abusing their power in the vilest ways. They exploited women for food, stole gold teeth and valuables from the prisoners. And if you had nothing to give, they'd sentence you to death. By this point, humanity on that island was dead. Survival now meant killing and eating others. And this is where the story gets its darkest. Nadzino Island had turned into a nightmare. Violence, death, and hunger's darkness were everywhere. For those still alive, there was nothing left to eat. Survival outweighed humanity. And that's when the unthinkable happened: cannibalism. On May 21st, 1933, the guards noticed something gruesome. Parts of dead bodies were missing. They investigated and found out the starving prisoners were eating the deceased. That's when Nadzino Island earned its name, Cannibal Island. At first, it was just the bodies of those who died from disease or cold. But as things got worse, that wasn't enough. People started hunting the living. The guards arrested over 50 prisoners for cannibalism and executed them. But that punishment? It was nothing compared to the cruelty happening every day. Gangs formed, the strong preying on the weak. One witness said they'd tie up the weaker prisoners and cut them apart, alive. This wasn't just hunger, it was survival's brutal symbol. Hunger had forced people to cross every line, turning them into animals. Women were easy targets for these gangs. Some allied with gang leaders for protection, but it didn't save them for long. Each day, the death toll climbed. Hunger, cold, and disease taking most of the prisoners. Rumours swirled that the few still surviving had no choice but to kill and eat others to keep going. Even so, some prisoners tried to escape, but it wasn't easy. The Ob River surrounded them, icy water, strong currents, making survival nearly impossible. Some built rafts from wood and clothes, but they didn't last. The river swept them away. The guards, ordered to shoot escapees, gunned down many before they even hit the water. A few who crossed the river reached Siberia's freezing forests. But surviving there? Even tougher. Cold, wild animals and no food turned every day into a battle. Witnesses say only 2 or 4 made it to nearby villages and survived. That tiny number? It's practically a miracle. Nadzino Island had become a death factory. Every day people fell to hunger, disease, or violence. And yet, the Soviet government did nothing solid to stop it, like it was some cruel experiment to test how much torture humans could endure. How could anyone survive this? But the real question is, was this a conspiracy? Was this tragedy set up from the start? The answer's yes. For 13 weeks, Nazino Island hosted a raw display of hunger, violence, and cannibalism. For those caught in it, every day brought new torment. They sent 6,700 people there, and most died from starvation, cold, disease, or violence. After 13 weeks, the government realized nothing good was coming from this and decided to end the hell. In August 1933, they ordered the survivors brought back. When rescue boats arrived, they saw a terrifying sight. In 13 weeks, about 2,000 had died from hunger, cold, or violence. Another 2,000 were missing, swept away by the river, dead in the forests, or eaten. Officially, only 2,856 survived, but most were so weak and sick they didn't last long. Just 200 were in decent health. But what does that even mean after this? Could they ever live normal lives again? The horror of Nazino Island embarrassed even the Soviet government. Stalin and his officials tried everything to bury it. They made a report, but hid it in classified files. For 50 years, after the Soviet Union fell, a human rights group uncovered it and showed the world. That's when we first learned what happened on Cannibal Island. Historians still wrestle with this. Were those people deliberately abandoned there? Some experts say it was Stalin's social experiment to see how much suffering people could take and what hunger would drive them to. If that's true, it's even more horrifying. Those deaths weren't just from hunger or cold. They were victims of power's cruelty, sacrificed for a mad leader's twisted test. So friends, what's your take? Was what happened on Nazino Island right? Could it have been stopped? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. If you liked this video and learned something new, hit that like button and share it with your friends. Got a story you want us to cover? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. See you in the next one. Bye.